Grace, peace, and welcome to Podcast of the Whills, a podcast that treats Star Wars like a sacred text. I am Nick Milkey, and we're actually here in the daytime. That's so weird. We were talking about this earlier. There's light coming through the window because normally this show takes place on a Sunday night. So why are we here on a Saturday morning? Because we are a part of Podathon, and we are raising money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So thank you so much for hanging out this morning. Thank you to Scotty and Pete for putting this whole thing together and allowing us to be a part of it. This is a really exciting day. I'm really excited for the opportunity just to be a part of this amazing lineup of shows, to get a chance to hang out and raise money for such a worthy cause. I think so many of us know somebody who is connected to Make-A-Wish. Actually, one of my best friends, his daughter is actually a Make-A-Wish child. And so this is a really important cause to me. It's really important that we get to do this because Make-A-Wish has such an impact on so many families around the world. And it really is an honor to get to be a part of this day. And we're already over $3,000. That's unreal. And we're just getting started. So thank you for hanging out with us today. Thank you for coming in here. And this is even more of an honor. Not only do we get to help raise money for Make-A-Wish, but I get to talk to a really amazing person. I'm going to go through this, and I have this written down because I don't want to miss the important details. We have an amazing guest today. My guest today is Mr. Paul Sun-Hyung Lee. Paul is a Korean-born Canadian actor, writer, comedian who has over 65 credits on his IMDb page, a few of which include his most recent role in a Hallmark Christmas movie. So if you're not a Star Wars person, but you're a Hallmark movie person, he was in The Boyfriends of Christmas Past, which just came out like 2 weeks ago, I think. You certainly know him as Appa in Kim's Convenience, which is a Canadian sitcom that I am like halfway through, and it's phenomenal. I'm so in love with that show. It is so much fun. Of course, most relevant to us as Star Wars fans, he played Carson Teva or Teva. We're going to talk about that because I don't know which one is correct. In 2 episodes of The Mandalorian. He has his own streaming channel. He does geeky unboxings in the Geeky Basement. One of the things that Paul does, and we're going to talk about this too, Paul is also a sports fan. And so for me as a sports fan, to have the crossover between nerdy, geeky things and sports is phenomenal. So he has a show called DFA. If you don't know what DFA stands for, it's designated for assignment. Those are great streams to hang out in to get to talk a little bit about sports. He's a fan of so many different genres, things, not just Star Wars. And also, as if that wasn't enough, and as if he wasn't amazing enough, he is also a member of the 501st Legion, which is no stranger to raising money for charity, going out and doing great things, costuming, trooping, doing all that kind of stuff. So without further ado, I am so excited to welcome Mr. Paul Sun-Hyung Lee.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Nick.
My friend.
Oh,
it is my pleasure to have you today.
Thanks so much. Yeah, this is great. I mean, get to talk about Star Wars, get to talk about fandom, and raise money for a fantastic charity. That's a win-win.
What could be better? I'm gonna get this out of the way first because I did mention that you're a sports fan, which I love, and I've popped into some of your streams to talk sports. You're a Toronto Blue Jays fan.
Yes, I am.
I'm an Atlanta Braves fan, and while I am riding a high right now, I will not lie in saying that I still live with the sting of the 1992 World Series against the Blue Jays and Joe Carter. It's still fresh in my mind, even if the Braves did win the World Series just last week. So I'm glad that you and I can bridge things and overcome that difference and still hang out and talk.
Look, and that's fantastic, too. I mean, there are other ties as well because, Alex Anthopoulos, who's the current GM of the Atlanta Braves, was the GM for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Correct.
And he was instrumental in terms of breaking that playoff drought that the Jays had for, I believe it was 22 years.
That's right.
Back in 2016. So, there's a lot of ties to Atlanta with these two organizations.
We've shared great players. Josh Donaldson was a Blue Jay, was a Brave.
That's right. You guys have George Poulis, who is the trainer for the Blue Jays for as long as I can remember. So seeing him leave with Anthopoulos was a bit of a heartbreaker too.
No doubt.
Congratulations.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Absolutely. Yeah. It's been a long time coming. I tell this story a lot. I lived in Central Illinois until I was 10 years old. So I grew up a Cardinals fan, and then we moved to Alabama in 1988. And thanks to Ted Turner and TBS, the Braves were always present, always available. And it was something that we as a family did as we watched baseball together. So I became a Braves fan in the terrible Braves years with Dale Murphy in the
Right.
80s, early 90s. And so to go through those years of winning the World Series in 95, but then like the 14 division championships and all the, the constant, it was nice to get one last week. So
Right.
it's a lot of fun. But we didn't come here to talk sports. We did. We talk about whatever we want. It's my show. But we're going to talk about your journey. We're going to talk about your Star Wars experience, certainly, but also your experience with being a fan of so many different things. So before we get into your nerd cred, which there is plenty of, tell us a little bit about Paul. Tell us a little bit about your background kind of in general.
Oh, wow. What can I say? I think I'm the luckiest man in the world. A lot of times, the things I've been able to experience um, have been. I keep saying I'm like Cinderella at the ball. That's what I feel like, especially with the way my career's gone. Like my family immigrated to Canada when I was 3 months old,
Okay.
and being of Asian heritage, Korean heritage, I never quite fit in. I felt like I didn't fit in. My parents didn't speak English very well. I looked different from the other kids. And as a child of immigrant parents, basically they were always working, and I was at home with my sister, and the TV was my babysitter. So that's how I learned how to speak English, by watching television, consuming voraciously all the different shows on TV. And that really stoked the fires of my own fandom. And so I became a fan of very, very many things. But one of the things that I didn't notice at the time, but really didn't have an effect on me until later on, was the fact that a lot of the stories that I consumed were North American stories, right? So there were a
Right.
lot of there weren't very many Asian people on TV back then. There were a couple,
Sure.
but they didn't drive the narrative. And whenever you did see an Asian face on TV, they were either, the bad guy or the other or the butt of the joke. And so when you're raised that way, you kind of raised thinking that, hey, you know what, my family doesn't really matter. People look like me are on the outside, and I didn't want to be on the outside. I wanted to conform. I wanted to be part of these stories. And so I really pushed away my family's heritage. Didn't want to be Korean. I didn't want any of that. And so, the direct result of that is really, I lost out on a lot of things growing up because I just didn't want them. So, in terms of language, I don't speak Korean anymore, right? I lost that
Sure.
ability. Just learning about my parents' heritage, I think there was a missed opportunity. And irony of ironies, when I became an actor, um, a lot of the parts that I was allowed to audition for were, ethnically specific. Even though I've been raised in Canada, even though I speak perfect English, I was never considered for any of these lead roles or supporting roles or this or that. But I loved acting, so I became a character actor. And back in 2005, a play came my way. I was asked to read for it and help develop it. It was called Kim's Convenience. I
Mm-hmm.
jumped on it immediately, but just because I wanted to help the playwright Ince Choi, because he was a young and upcoming playwright and actor, and he wrote it for himself because he wasn't getting any work as an Asian actor, so he's creating his own work, and thus began that journey. And Kim's Convenience, for those of you who don't know, it's a television show. It's on Netflix right now, all 5 seasons of it. And it is about a Korean Canadian immigrant family, and I play Appa, who's the father. Basically, Appa means dad in Korean, and but it started off as a play, and that's what really sort of kickstarted my career, because the play caught on fire, became a huge hit in Canada. We toured across the country, uh, did like 2 weeks in New York, just off Broadway, and it got developed into a television series, and that series just sort of took off in Canada, then exploded on Netflix in the States, and that led to my getting a role on The Mandalorian. And so just it's this huge chain of events, sequence of events that really had to sort of
Without a doubt.
happen for this. And so now I kind of feel like I'm living my best life, because now, being a fan of all these things, people didn't know I was a nerd and a geek and I was into collecting and cosplaying and this and that. Nobody knew anything about that. And it's now that I have kind of this platform where more eyes are on me in the show, and people are so shocked. They're like, "What? Appa collects action figures?" It's like, yeah, he collects comics. Well, yeah, I used to, And so it's a lot of fun exploring that side too, and using my own voice too, because people know me. A lot of people know me as Appa, and he speaks with an accent.
Right.
Right. And so when people hear my real voice, they're really sort of like, whoa, 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 wait, what's going on here? That's, like, I'm shook. I don't know. I don't know how to respond to that. Like, my whole world has changed. But it's nice to just sort of let my geek flag fly, and to celebrate all the things that I love, and uplift
Absolutely.
the community too, because I think that's the best part of fandom, is that interconnectivity and doing the best you can, like the 501st, like this podcastathon where we're raising money for great causes.
Hmm.
And that's the best part of the community itself, was when we uplift and support each other. And this is something that I feel very strongly about, especially in this community, because it was always there for me growing up. I always felt like I fit in and I belonged, and I want to see that continue as the next generations of fans come in and get excited and
Oh, without
learn,
a
and
doubt.
there are new franchises and new different things that we can all sort of share that joy in, and that's what excites me.
That's amazing. And I love that story. I love hearing you talk about, your connections and wanting to help out that playwright and the ability to share and give back, which is obviously what this day is about, is
Mhm.
sharing and giving back. And, your story so naturally goes side by side with that. So I think that makes it even better reason why you get to be one of our first guests of the day. As we're continuing to raise money for Make-A-Wish, and just a shout out to everybody, if you haven't done it yet, there's plenty of time for you to donate. We're going to be on all day. If you see in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, there's a QR code. Hit that, donate, hit the link on the other side on the bottom. There's plenty of ways to get there. The link will be in the live chat. So thank y'all for donating. Thank you for doing that, and giving back. And that's, like you said, that's a part of your story, is giving back. And I've seen that in your live streams. You love connecting with the community. You've created this community of the Bitter Brigade, connecting with fans. I've seen you on other shows, and you're so generous with your time, which is, I think, awesome. And I think is also indicates to me your recognition of the opportunities that you have, and especially to get to work on something like Star Wars, which is why we're here today. So as we start to kind of transition into Star Wars a little bit, like any great story, there is an origin.
Mhm.
Tell us about your Star Wars origin story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I was 5 years old,
Okay.
and my dad took my sister and I to see a movie called Star Wars in the movie theaters. Uh, and having never, like, I think the first movie I ever saw was Jaws.
Okay.
My parents took us to see that, and it was traumatic but awesome at the same time. But Star Wars really struck a chord with me, for the scale of it. The beginning
Hmm.
of that opening crawl, and I couldn't read, but like you see all these massive letters come up, and then you see that the blockade runner go, the Tantive 4 go across the screen, and then this massive Star Destroyer just going, and it just kept going and going and going. So right away, I'm engaged as a 5-year-old because they're massive starships chasing each other, exchanging fire, and then the boarding party, and then all the rebel fleet troopers. They're there. They're trying to repel the stormtrooper boarding party, and I was just like, I was hooked. I was hooked, and then the introduction of all the different characters, from Leia to Luke to Han, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Darth Vader, Grand Moff Tarkin. These
Hmm.
things stuck with me, and I was immediately hooked. And I keep saying this in different interviews too, but like Star Wars was like a benchmark in my life, because my dad took my sister and I in 1977 to see it in the theaters. My babysitter took my sister and I to see Empire in the movie theaters. And then in '83, my sister and I were old enough to go by ourselves to watch Return of the Jedi. And so those are the three stages. And then for the prequel trilogy, it was like, episode one came out just as I met my wife, right?
Okay.
Episode two came out and I was married. And episode three came out and like I had kids. So like
Hmm.
there are all these different Star Wars has always kind of been there at those sort of big different changing points in my life. Um,
Absolutely.
and it's always captured my attention, and I've always been a huge fan, and of many other genres as well, and different shows. But Star Wars has always kind of, it sticks with you. And for the
Sure.
longest time too, that stretch between Return of the Jedi and Episode One, I mean, it was like what, '99. So, you're talking a number of years, like
Yeah.
decades in
Hmm.
between, and you think, okay, well, we're not going to get any more Star Wars, and then they announced another trilogy, and like the whole world went ape, like just went nuts over that.
Yes. Absolutely.
So it's that excitement of like, oh my god, they're making more. And as an actor at the time too, I thought, oh, maybe I'll get a chance. Maybe no, they're shooting in England again. Right? I'm this little this Canadian actor, and so it was interesting, um, to finally, when with the Mandalorian, getting the call for
Hmm.
that was just like, I still don't believe it. You know,
Absolutely.
I still
Absolutely.
don't
Well, and
believe
we're
it.
gonna come to that story in just a minute as
Yeah.
well. You talked about Star Wars is something that sticks with you, and it's certainly, I love the way you said that about the stages. Star Wars, Empire, Jedi, then the prequels and the different things. And I've been in a similar vein. I'm just a tiny bit younger than you, but I remember seeing Return of the Jedi at the drive-in movie theater in the back of my parents' station wagon as a kid. And then I was halfway through college when the prequels came out. And then when the sequels came out, I have kids. And so there's those different modes. And like you said, just getting to see it or going to see, Last Jedi or Rogue One or Tross with myself as the nerd who's not going to miss the first showing, but then going back a day or two later with my kids and watching them watch these movies and having that connecting point.
I pulled my kids from school.
Good for you.
I did something my dad never had a chance to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you know what? This is you'll learn more from this than from school. Whatever you're learning today in school, this you'll remember this more.
It's not that important. That's right.
Yeah. And it was just like, and it's something that I never got a chance to do with my dad other than the first time. And I think that's why it sticks out too, because my dad, it wasn't my mom and my dad, it was just my dad.
Okay.
Took my sister and I to see that. And so, there's that part of me. It's sort of like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to, because my parents always worked so hard and they rarely had any time off. So whenever I did get a chance to spend with them, it was something, rather, it was a big sort of event.
Yeah.
Going camping or this or that. So to be able to do that with my boys and like play hooky, pull them from school. And I'm bald-faced about it. Like on the phone, you're supposed to call the school and let them know why they're not going. And I was just like, we're going to go see a movie.
That's right.
We're going to see the premiere of Rogue One. And
we're having family time. Deal with it.
Exactly.
Okay. So we talked about Star Wars and how it sticks with you. Before we keep going on Star Wars, what are some of your other big fandoms? What are the other big things that I know there's a million, but and especially if you watch any of your unboxings, like you cover so much territory, but maybe even, I guess, just from growing up, you talk about being an 80s kid as I was as well. What are the big rocks? I know you're a Ghostbusters guy. You've got your own Proton pack. That's a huge thing for you. What are some of those other ones before we keep on our Star Wars path?
Back to the Future franchise is always a huge one. I think I got like 3 or 4 DeLoreans back there. As well. Let me see. Star Trek obviously was that was a huge tent pole in my life too, because like with the Star Wars void, there was always Star Trek, because the television series, you got like, how many episodes? 70, 69, 72, some odd episodes from over 3 seasons, plus all the novelizations, plus all the movies that were coming out. So Star Trek I was heavy into that. And yes, you can love Star Wars and Star Trek at the same time.
Absolutely.
It's really funny how there's that sort of that division of fandoms are there. Like you can't have like one and not the other. I would disagree with that. The Terminator, the Alien franchise, starting with like Alien and Aliens, even Alien 3, like the director's cut of that is like really trippy. What else? Oh my gosh, different shows. So many television series, like Space 1999, huge fan of. Lost in Space, the original from like I think that's the 50s or 60s. What's that? Red Dwarf is another big one from across the pond. Really love the humor of Red Dwarf. But like things like Gilligan's Island to like, Gunsmoke, Rocket Robin Hood, the animated series, Spider-Man, the animated series. I used to watch the Electric Company. Like there was no tomorrow because they had a live action Spider-Man, little snippets in there. The Adventures of Mighty Hercules.
So much stuff.
Yeah, it's just how much time do we have here on this?
The list could go on and on.
Exactly.
And again, if I encourage everybody to check out your streams and see some, and again, the excitement for you in each of those things is just as exciting as it is for Star Wars, and that's very evident in your fandom and your unboxings and talking about digging into trailers. You did a great stream a month or so ago when they released the Ghostbusters trailer for the Ghostbusters movie that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And just the excitement and the joy. And so it's so fun to see that. As we jump back to Star Wars, I'm a little all over the map. Talk about finally getting that call, getting that opportunity to get cast in Star Wars. You got cast in The Mandalorian, and I love this story, and I want you to tell it for the folks that are watching today.
Well, it started in 2018, and I'd been invited to the Unforgettable Gala in Los Angeles. And the Unforgettable Gala is basically a celebration of Asian Americans in the media. And Kim's Convenience had sort of arrived, and we were on the radar, and the show was doing really good things and was critically acclaimed. So we got invited down. And so I was down, and I'd never been to LA before. And there I was at the Beverly Hilton, which, you know, you only watch on, you've seen it on TV, you've heard about it, and they do the Emmys and they do the Golden Globes there. And I'm like this Canadian kid who's there going, wow, okay, here we are. And this woman jumps in front of me and she goes, Paul, do you remember who I am? And I look and it's my friend, Deborah Chow. I hadn't seen Deborah in 25 years. Now, Deborah Chow is a director who is a director. And she directed episodes of The Mandalorian, but she's also like right now she's working on the Obi-Wan Kenobi show.
Yes, she
right?
is.
That's kind of her baby right there. So that's her cred. But Deborah and I, 25 years ago, worked at the Factory Theatre in Toronto, Ontario. It's a small theater company that was going bankrupt, basically. That's how we met. And she was an aspiring filmmaker and I was an aspiring actor. She asked me to be in a short film of hers. I agreed. We shot it. She disappeared. Next time I see her is at the Unforgettable Gala. So I'm saying to Deb, where have you been? What are you doing? She said, well, that short film got me into Columbia Film School. So she went there, became a director, and now she's working in Hollywood. And I said, well, what are you working on? She says, a show called The Mandalorian. And my jaw drops, right? So, oh my God, you're working on it? I didn't know you were working. I'm so excited for the show. She said, well, that's great. Because I've been trying to get in touch with you because Dave Filoni is a big fan of yours, of Kim's Convenience, because of Kim's Convenience. And he's thinking about he wants to write something for you. He's writing something for you. And I was just like, you know, you have those moments where you just sort of black out a little bit, you know. I could have swear like my nose could have started bleeding. I was just like, oh my God. And so, you know, that's when I grabbed Deborah's elbow very gently, but I said, you do realize I have like 8 Star Wars cosplays at home. She's like, what? And I said, so I show her these pictures on my phone, and they're costumes for the 501st, basically, and some for the Rebel Legion. And Deb's like, oh my God, I can send these to me. I'm going to send them over to Dave. So she texts them to Dave, and Dave right away responds, says, well, you could just wear his costumes to work.
Exactly. You're ready to wear. You're ready to go.
So it was great. I got invited to the set for a season. Had to fly back from LA to LA like a few weeks later, and I got to the set and I got to meet Dave and I got to see Deborah work and Dave work as well. I met Jon Favreau. I saw the volume for the first time. I saw Baby Grogu for the first time, and this was like, what is that?
What is actually going on here?
I know it was like, you know, Alice in Wonderland, Cinderella, all these, that peek behind the curtain at Oz. You're looking at all the machinations. Seeing them work on that was just so trippy, because as a lifelong Star Wars fan, to have access like that early on was just mind-blowingly awesome. And then I had to sit on it for like months, right? Because it's all don't tell anybody. But you know, Dave was a consummate host as well, because like he gave me a backstage tour of all the, you know, the costume department, the arts department, the props department. And I stayed and I sat in that props trailer for like an hour and a half. Like that was,
they would have had to drag me out.
Man, so wizard. It is, you're there, and I'm talking with Josh and Yang, and they're showing me. So I got to hold a blaster that was used. I think it was one of the blasters that a skiff guard used in Return of the Jedi. I can't remember the designation. It's not DH-17 or something like that. Close, or DL-17. Anyways, it's based on an air pistol, basically, right? And I'm looking and going, oh my God, I know where that's from. I know what that is. And then I went home just like completely stupefied by the whole event. Like my life could have ended there, and I think it would have been good. It'd have been like, yeah, I did it. That's cool. A few months later, I'm at an Earth rally, you know, across the globe. There was that big thing where every Friday their major cities were shutting down.
Right.
They're protesting, you know, we need action on climate change.
Sure.
And I was part of that. And my phone rings. And that was a surreal day to begin with. My phone rings and my agent's on the line. She says, so Lucasfilm called and asked for your availability. And again, the moment of like, I just blacked out. Right? It's like, well, yes, I'll be there. I'll be there. I don't care what I'm doing. I will change it. And that's how it got started. So it was an offer, from Lucasfilm to play the role of, back then they had code names. So it was like Foodie Pilot 1. It's like, who the heck is, what is that? I didn't understand. And that became, for me, an introduction into the world of, you know, the Cloak and Dagger world of disguising names and productions and characters to prevent leaks from happening. Right. So it was incredible. It was
that's so wild. And you tell a story, and I've heard you tell this story before, and it's going to kind of connect to one of my questions, but one of the deals with Podcast of the Whills is we always say we treat Star Wars like a sacred text.
Mhm.
So a lot of our episodes are, and I think I explained this to you in one of our emails, a lot of the times we'll dig into the Star Wars canon, and it's essentially like we're having a Bible study, but instead of the Bible, we're using Star Wars, and we're pulling out what are the lessons, what are the things that it's telling us, all that. So one of the questions that I love to ask my guests is, what is your Star Wars spiritual experience? What is the thing that, it hits you in such a way that it was more than just like, oh, this good thing happened to me today? Because of course you've talked twice about blacking out while hearing good news. But if I were to guess, I would say easily one of your potential Star Wars spiritual experiences would have been the story I've heard you tell about the helmet.
Yeah. That's exactly it. I flew down to Los Angeles to do to shoot. It was one of like, I had 4 days of shooting.
Mm-hmm.
They fly me down to Los Angeles from Toronto. It's like a 5-hour flight. I land, I look out the window. There's a jet that's wrapped in Star Wars colors. Like one of the airlines had done that. And I thought, wow, that's a great omen, right? And land,
Absolutely.
I get whisked away right from the. It was such a short period of time. I got whisked away right from the airport straight to the costume department. And I built this costume before, like I have it, like I have my own cosplay, my Rebel Pilot cosplay, and so I'm very familiar with it. But this one was a tailor-made jumpsuit, which is just like, whoa, hey, look at that! It's great, and it putting it together. And there's another side story about how I helped help the costumers figure out the ejection harness on it. And my head is spinning because I'm actually there getting fitted for an X-wing pilot helmet costume, and helping them put it together, which was awesome. And they said, okay, well, we need to take reference photos now, so we know how it's supposed to look, so the day on set, but we don't have your helmet because it's being painted right now, so we've got the stand-in helmet. And they pull out this Rubbermaid tin, not bin, bin, not a tin.
Yeah.
And there's a helmet in there, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's not Luke's helmet, but I know the design. And I stop and I go, is that what I think it is? And the wardrobe people are like, yeah, it's like, that's Biggs Darklighter's helmet. So how did you know? And because I'm a nerd, how do I
This
know?
is what I do.
And I said, so is that the actual screen used helmet? And they're like, yeah, and put it on. So I pick it up and I look inside, and it's got, it's old, and the foam is like, it's all yellowed and it's sort of eaten away. And it's got this little sticker name tag in it. And it's, Garrick Hagon. And that's the name of the actor who played Biggs Darklighter.
Absolutely.
And I started to cry because, like I said before, I was 5 years old when I saw that movie. It had such an impact on me. And I did not expect on that day that I would, let alone be wearing it, the touching or seeing something that was up on the screen that affected me so immensely. And I had to put it on, and I had tears in my eyes. And it was just such a transcendental moment for me because, 43 years later, I'm wearing this thing on my head. I'm living the dream. And I don't believe it. Like that's I felt so blessed and grateful. And I was not expecting, I kind of thought, hey, it's going to be cool. We're going to have lots of fun. And this was just like, I did not expect to get that emotional. And that was not the first time I shed a tear while I was on that set, and I don't think I'm the only one to ever go through this, because the wardrobe people were saying, yeah, this happens.
It's unbelievable. And I can't begin to imagine what that experience was like. And I love, like you said, this is cool. We all think this, like, oh, we get to go, hang out, and you're going to have a good day at a costume fitting, and you're going to do this thing. But then that impactful moment happens. And like you said, every little bit, I love how you describe the deteriorating foam, and like, immediately when you see it, what it is. And it just hits you in that way. That's truly the definition of this spiritual experience question that I love to ask my guests. And that's it. That's the actual embodiment of that. And that's so amazing.
And that's, that's when it really hit me. This is real. This is
Hmm.
actually going to be happening. To see that, because to have them have that kind of access and have it in a Rubbermaid bin type thing. It's just, it's tremendous, because all the costumes, the props, all the different things from the movies get filtered down to the production to save on fabrication costs and whatnot.
Absolutely.
And I remember, because it was for season 2 and everything was so secret, I only knew my lines. I only had
Right.
access to my scenes. But in the wardrobe department, I'm looking on the shelves, and I was building at the same time a Mud Trooper costume from Solo.
Hmm.
And I look on the shelf and go, oh, they have a bunch of respirators from Solo there. I wonder why. And then you find out later on in the other, oh, okay, they
Yeah.
repurposed a lot of these, like the armor and the costumes from the Mud
Hmm.
Troopers to transport. They repurposed them as transport drivers.
Yeah.
So that was
It's
really, it's really neat
absolutely
how,
unbelievable.
yeah.
So, okay, so you have that experience, and at that point, like you said, you could have just been done. Like you don't even have to go shoot the show, but you get to go shoot the show
Yeah.
and be in this. And especially, you were directed by Carl Weathers,
Yeah.
which you have also spoken about how cool that was. Because again, Carl Weathers has been in some of our favorite, movies and nerdy things over the years as well. Talk
Mhm.
about the experience of shooting, being on set, working with Carl, that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, he's OG Hollywood, right? Like, he is
Absolutely.
royalty, and there is a charisma and an intensity to him. He was just sitting. I remember the first time I saw him. I'm in my costume, and they make you wear these big black cloaks over them to hide the costumes, because they have,
Right.
people on rooftops with telephoto lenses trying to take pictures and get spoilers, basically. So they're very secretive. And we're in the back lot, and it's lunchtime, and Carl's going to be directing the episode that I'm in. I have a scene with him, and I figure he's sitting there all by himself, and the crew is all sort of leaving him alone, which should have been my first clue. Uh, and I was like, feeling kind of saucy, and I was like, I'm gonna go up and I'm going to introduce myself, because we're gonna be working together, and I'm a professional and blah. Oh boy! So I walk up to him with this tray full of food, and he's eating his food, and I said to him, "Do you mind if I sit down?" And he looks at me, and he's chewing his food, and he's looking at me. Carl Weathers he's not only just looking at me, he's sizing me up. And I'm like, is he gonna fight me? Is he what is this? And then he kicks the chair out across from him. He kicks it out so I can sit down in it.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh, that is such a baller move. And I go to sit down, and as I'm sitting down, he says, just as long as you don't expect a conversation. And I kind of stopped for like a nanosecond. There was that moment of, oh no, but I'd committed. Gotta sit down now. So I sat down, and I thought in my head, I'm like, just chew your food with your mouth closed. Don't make eye contact. Finish and leave. Don't talk. Don't do, and just eat your food.
Just be
Uh,
cool, man.
yeah, just it's fine. And we're eating. He's looking at me while we're eating, and I'm like, oh man, I made such a big mistake. And I said, we're actually going to be working together. I'm playing the Captain Carson Teva.
Hmm.
And he's like, oh, he's quiet. And he says, where are you from? I said, I put Canada. I'm from Canada, Canadian. And he says, no, like, where are people from? I said, oh, well, my parents are Korean heritage, Korean Canadian. He says, because you remind me of a friend of mine. It's your eyes. I said, oh, who's your friend? Do you know a guy named Pat Morita? I was like, yes, I do. Yes, I
May have
do.
heard of him.
Yeah. And it was just like, wow. And it was really cool. But it was one of these things where, because Carl didn't cast me, I got
Right.
cast by John and Dave,
Hmm.
basically. And so, as a director on an episode, I would imagine that you would want to know who you're working with. He didn't know who I was. Why would he? Like, I'm famous. I'm like Canadian famous, right?
Right.
Like, Netflix show, but it's a Canadian show. We weren't really on the map of America yet. It wasn't until the pandemic that the show really, really landed in America. But we had a small following,
Sure.
and so he didn't know who I was. And he's looking at me. He says, "So whose friend are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's Hollywood code for how'd you get this gig,
Right.
right?" Because he certainly didn't audition me. And I was like, "Well, I guess Dave. Dave is my friend. Yeah, Dave's my friend." And he was like, "Okay," but it was kind of. I felt as overjoyed as I was also very nervous, because I just didn't want to come across as some goppy sort of super fan who just like who think who doesn't know how to act and is too busy freaking out over different things instead of being a professional. And that's the other side of it. It's just like, I'm there for a job. I'm there to be hired. I want to do a good job. I want to prove I belong there. I want to prove that I'm worthy enough to be directed by Carl Weathers. And so that was the whole thing. And like, I had zero street cred on that set. Didn't matter
Absolutely.
what I had accomplished. Like, I'm a multiple award winning actor in Canada, but that means nothing in America. And I get it. That's part of the gig.
Sure.
And so like, that was a thing. So I really, really wanted to prove myself and that it's show that I had some craft and I can be professional and stuff like that. And so, working with him was an absolute blast because he's an actor's director. He's very, very smart. He's very direct as well. He doesn't couch things to make you feel better, nor is he like so blunt that he hurts your feelings, right? He gets to the point. It's Carl Weathers, for God's sake.
Sure.
So it's like, yeah, okay. So in terms of him giving notes, in terms of how he it was great. And it was an absolute pleasure. And after the first day, because it was a tough scene between myself and Gina Carano,
Right.
we shot that. I didn't really know who the character was at that point either, right? It was just still little snippets of the script. And so I had a very, very generous partner. Gina Carano was so generous and so great to me. And everybody was super nice to me as well, And Jon Favreau came up and said, we're going to keep doing this. We shoot this like a film. We keep going until we're happy. And then, so we're not going to go, okay, we're out of time. We have to move on. And you're stuck with a crappy performance type thing. And so it was great. And so after the first day, I think I proved, okay, I'm not just some guy that fell off a tomato truck and snuck onto set. Carl was way more relaxed around me and was very, very happy to have me there. And it was great. And so the second day, he just really, really opened up. And I learned about, he used to play in the Canadian Football League back in the day. It was like really, really great to sort of be in that comfort zone where he felt comfortable enough about me and my abilities that he could sort of treat me as a peer, which was just, again, I was floating on a cloud after that. So
absolutely amazing. And I would imagine, and as we've talked about already, with so many of the experiences that you've had being cast, the helmet, all these things, just being on that set. And obviously it doesn't look completely on the set like it does when you watch it on TV, but dealing with things like the volume, dealing with things like, it looks a lot more like it does on TV than it used to when, you shot things or you had to reset and all that. Just being there, X-Wing, like you get to be an X-Wing pilot, you get to be in an X-Wing cockpit, like just all those little bits. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, again, it just brought me back. I've been role playing Star Wars my entire life, it seems. And then to be sitting in an X-Wing cockpit with working lights and the starfield projected around me. And it is like certain perspective things look weird in the volume when you're standing far back, but in the camera, it translates perfectly. But I'm in that cockpit and I'm looking over to my right, and there is a high def projection of the Razor Crest and another X-Wing that Filoni's character is flying. And it looks real. It's stupendous. And so it's so much better than, some dude with a tennis ball on a stick. Well, that's a Razor Crest, right? Like, I could have done that anyways.
Sure.
But to have the actual projection there, and we're living in the future, that's the volume is magic. It's the closest thing to a holodeck we have right now. And I loved it. And the fact that there's a chase sequence afterwards where we're chasing the Razor Crest through the atmosphere of Maldo Kreis. And man, that was better than any ride I've ever been on to go through that. And it was just like Peyton Reed's directing, and he's saying, okay, now you're hitting this, you're banking really hard. You're feeling that. And I was just like, at the end of that sequence, I was like, again, and we'd reshoot it. And I didn't want to get out. I did not want to get out of that cockpit.
Could we do 5 more? Can we just keep going?
Like, I kind of screwed that one up. I can get to, I can do this better.
Well, and in the scenes that we have with Carson Teva and, the stuff that you did, it's obvious, that the joy comes through, as an actor, as a whatever. But some of those scenes, like you talked about the scene with Gina Carano, and I've heard you say before that you actually shot that first before the other stuff that you did. You were new on set. But in all of season 2 of The Mandalorian, like obviously there are some really great big parts. We get Ahsoka, we get Luke, we get, all those things. But I'll be honest, that's one of my favorite scenes in season 2 because I love the personal nature of that. And I love, Carson talks about I served on Alderaan, and we all know what that means. We all know what Alderaan is and what happened to Alderaan. And I compare it to a challenge coin that he leaves on the table, as he walks away. Just that really personal kind of connecting moment that we do get those throughout The Mandalorian. But I love that, and I love what you brought to that. But also in that chase sequence that you talk about, there's some little humor bits. It's Mando trying to pretend like the beacon doesn't work and the whole deal. And when he starts to run and Filoni says, "We've got a runner," you're casual, just like, "I'm on it." Like, we deal with this all the time.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a swagger there, which I thought was awesome. And, certainly is a character choice. So what is any of the backstory or what you've created for Carson in your head? What is your head canon for Carson?
Well, first of all, like the cool, calm sort of nature of the New Republic pilots, not pirates, pilots. That's all Favreau. He's
Sure.
like that's how he kind of described them. Like it's scarier because they're so nonchalant about things.
Right.
Like if you look at season 1, when the 3 X-wings just roll in, they're so it's like they're making toast or coffee.
Right.
They're just like, "Okay, we're on it." So calm, ice cold blood in their veins as they deal with it. And so there's that. There's very little to go on. I mean, I joked with Dave earlier on. I said, "Yeah, so Carson, what I was asking about his background so I could fill it in." I said, and I jokingly said, "What if he's that one guy that for whatever reason kept missing all the big battles, right? The Battle of Yavin, right? He missed because, he was in the bathroom with explosive diarrhea. The Battle of Hoth, he missed his transport. And so he never got to Hoth because of, all these different things." And Dave was like, no, which is great. But, he said, it's a big galaxy. It's a big, there are a lot of commands or different outposts that are there, and not all of them could get to these massive battles. And part of what I like about Teva is he's street smart. Like he knows you can't follow the book. You can't go by the book. You
That's
need
right.
to be realistic and pragmatic if you're going to survive, especially in the Outer Rim.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. He's like this wizened guy who's been around the block a few times. He's made his fair share of mistakes as a rookie, probably, but he's really learned from it. And he knows because he has limited resources, he can't do it by himself. And the smartest thing to do is like win hearts and minds and get the star systems on his side to work together. That's the only way they're going to survive. And I love that element of him. He's a survivor.
Yeah.
He survived Alderaan. He's surviving on his own in the Outer Rim with a small group of pilots, limited resources. He's kind of like, in my mind, I reckon to like the old U.S. Marshals, where the reputation really preceded them, and things could get bad. But when they came in, you knew there was going to be trouble, type thing. And I love that mystique around the New Republic outpost at Adelphi that's there. I just love that. So that's how I see him. I would hope we'll find out more about him. I don't know. It's above my pay grade type thing. But those are the things that I filled in as well. Just more of not maybe specific details, but just an overall sense of where he's coming from to just sort of give him that weight and that gravitas of having been around the block a few times.
I love that. I love that so much. Another question I have, because we as Star Wars fans say this all the time, we are living in a golden era of Star Wars content.
Yeah.
We've got the trailer just this week for Book of Boba Fett. We know that there's a Mando season 3 being worked on, Ahsoka, Kenobi, Andor. Those are all just TV things. We know there's movies down the road, animation. There's some rumors this week. Disney Plus Day is Friday. There's a bunch coming down the line. What are the things that you're most excited about? Obviously, it's all of them, but if you could pick a couple at the top of your list, what would they be?
Honestly, Obi-Wan is one of them, just because I want to see what Deb does with that series, and because of all the delays from beforehand, I know she's going to knock it out of the park, and I'm just so excited to see what they're going to do with that and how they're they're going to work it, and with Ewan McGregor reprising that role, and
Absolutely.
it's been confirmed that Hayden Christensen, another Toronto boy,
There you go.
reprising his role as Anakin and Darth Vader. I'm so like, what are they going to do? How are they going to have him there? That obviously, Book of Boba Fett, just because it's so close. I think December it's coming out, and just the reemergence of Boba Fett as a relevant character is stunning. I'm so excited to see what Robert Rodriguez is going to do with that character as well, and of course with Ming-Na Wen as Fennec Shand.
Yes.
That's a wonderful tag team. You look at that, and I want to see what that's all about. They dropped the trailer, and it was just like salivating over that one. Yeah, Mandalorian season 3. Obviously, I think we have to wait till. I mean, they're shooting it now, and I think we have to wait till next year to see any of it. Like if they follow that schedule, it's a while away, I think. But again, and then the Ahsoka series. Of course, right? Bad Batch 2 and Visions and it just piles on. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah,
right?
You say a couple and then you just start listing the rest. I totally get it.
Exactly.
Well, we're getting close to wrapping up. We've still got a few more minutes, but I have a couple more questions. One of the things that I want to ask you, and of course, I don't want to get you in trouble, and we would never ask you to say anything that you can't say. But I'm hopeful, and surely you are as well, that we're going to get some more Carson in Star Wars. I hope that that's on the radar, and surely you are. Do you have any?
I would love that, honestly. Like I said after season 2, it's like if that's it for him, hey, I got to live that dream, and now it's sort of like I would love to do more. Absolutely, who wouldn't want to do more? I got nothing to say though.
That's right. That's fair. Totally fair.
I just, like everybody else. I mean, God, yeah. Can you imagine?
Yeah,
you get a recurring part. It's like not just like a one-off.
That's right.
But
you've already recurred. You've been in more than one episode. We just need to keep that going.
Yeah.
Another one I have for you, and these are things that you probably don't know. So we're just kind of talking in the wishful thinking category.
Yeah.
Surely you agree that we need a Carson Teva Black Series figure. We need a licensed, straight up. I've seen some of the customs that you've posted that people have made.
Yeah.
But we need that figure. We need that to be a part of all of our collections.
Yeah. No, I would honestly, I would love that too. I would love that too. I have actually the Trapper Wolf one behind me.
Nice.
And Dave was kind enough to sign it for me as well. So it's just like, I would love to have that matching set. But I think that's a Hasbro decision. So
that's awesome. So we are circling in. We've got just a few minutes left. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and hanging out with us this morning. It has truly been a pleasure to hear your stories, to hear your excitement, which is so obvious in all of this. I want to encourage everybody that's watching to keep donating to Make-A-Wish. If you haven't had a chance to donate yet, there's links on the screen. There's QRs on the screen. I know that we are raising a ton of money today, and we are just getting started. This day is going to keep going. We have so many amazing guests. We have so many people that we're excited to hear from today. But it started with Paul. So, Paul, first of all, thank you for being here today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
This has been truly a pleasure for me, and I love your involvement in your story. It's so great. Tell everybody where we can find you, what you've got going on, if there's anything that you want to plug. We did mention Boyfriends of Christmas Past is one of the hot tickets right now, Hallmark Christmas movies. But plug anything else you've got going on, where we can find you.
I have a YouTube channel called Bitter Asian Dude Inc. And basically I do fun boxing Sundays. I unbox a bunch of geeky collectibles. I do a half-assed review, and we chat. It's a lot of fun on that channel. It started about a year and a half ago. It's grown tremendously, bigger than I ever thought. It started off as a lark, and we're 14,000 subscribers and growing, which is fantastic. And so it really is about building up the nerd community and having fun and just chatting. I also do have a number of different streams on that channel. DFA is one of them, the sports ball chat that we have. That's a newer one. And I've got some other side streams with my boys. We have one called Game On with my eldest son, where we talk about video games, and another one with my youngest called Wonderfully Weird Wednesdays with Miles. And so they're basically drawing contests that my youngest and I have, and we just sort of chat with people. you can find me on Instagram at Angry Uppa,
Mm-hmm.
where I just released my first reel, and it's about talking about the difference between an Anovos helmet, Mando helmet, and a De Nuo Novo
Yes.
helmet, which took over the license from Anovos. And on Twitter, I'm on Bitter Asian Dude, at Bitter Asian Dude on Twitter. So yeah, those are the big things. I have other things in the work right now. I'm not allowed to talk about any of them, but keep your ears to the ground because there's going to be an announcement fairly soon regarding one of them, and it's a big one. So I'm
That's
really excited
fantastic.
when that gets shared, but we'll see what happens.
Well, we are thrilled for you. And again, I can't thank you enough for hanging out today. This truly has been a pleasure for me. Thank you to everybody who has hung out and watched with us along in the live chat. And thank you to everybody that's donated. Keep donating, keep hanging out. And that's going to wrap it up for us. I'm going to say thank you to Paul. Thank you to Scotty and Jerry for organizing this and letting us be a part of it. Thank you to everybody that's watching, and may the force be with you always.
Okay, see you.